Indeed. Let's chat for a little bit, Jim, about the JFK assassination. You've done a lot of work in that arena, this being the 42nd anniversary of his death. I can't believe 42 years already. I mean, nearly half a century. Where has the time gone?
I can't believe it either, and especially in my case, because I've been teaching a course at the University of Texas at Arlington since 1976 on the assassination, and of course, for many years there, fall and spring semester, I'm watching those newsreels all over again and watching those witnesses' testimony, and it just, it's still fresh in my mind, and it's hard to conceive that was, pushing 50 years ago.
Now, was Rule by Secrecy one of your first books?
No, actually, my first book was Crossfire on the Kennedy assassination, because when I left the newspaper business down here in Texas, I tried to start my own, and if you think you don't make money working for a newspaper, try owning one. And then I decided, well, I write, so what can I write about that people would want to know? And I'd been in contact with a bunch of the researchers in the Kennedy assassination arena, and I realized back in the 80s that there was a plethora of information about the Kennedy assassination that no one had really been exposed to. So I wrote Crossfire and accumulated all that, put it all together, put all the theories in there, put everything but the kitchen sink, and it just took off. And I'm very gratified because it's still valid today. There's virtually nothing that's come out since that book was published that in any way substantially changes the conclusions.
Of the various theories that you put out there, Jim, that you investigated, was there one that you continue to hold on to, the one that you think possibly is the one that truly happened on that horrible day in Dallas?
Well, yeah. In fact, I've been teaching that since 1976, and it hadn't changed since then. You have to understand that people, unfortunately, the news media, if and when they ever decide to address the research community in the Kennedy assassination, they tend to focus on the differences. People arguing over, how many gunmen and from what locations and what were the trajectories. This is a bit like, losing sight of the forest for looking at the trees. What you'd find, I think, is that by and large, almost everyone in the research community now has concluded that if Lee Harvey Oswald acted at all, and that's a big if, that he certainly didn't act alone. Well, therefore, by dictionary definition, we have a conspiracy. And most people now accept that. The latest polls show it's up around 85% of the population now believes that there was a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy, and in fact, the last official government pronouncement was from the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and they said, based on scientific evidence, that they was probably a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. But we don't know what that conspiracy was, and the federal government has declined to investigate further or to tell us what it was. And in my mind, that's what elevates what was legally a Texas homicide into a national coup d'etat.
Why at that time, Jim, did they want to keep that quiet? Were they afraid of widespread panic in this country if it was revealed that the president had been killed by a group of people within this country?
Right. I think it goes deeper than that, George. I think that by the fall of 1963, Kennedy was beloved by the general population, and his approval ratings were around 65%. And he looked to be a shoo-in for president in the 1964 election. But what most people were not aware of then, and most people aren't aware of now, is that he had managed to alienate and incur the intense hatred of some of the most powerful and violent factions in this country, namely this organized crime,
right?
The CIA, the FBI, the military-industrial complex, as General Eisenhower called it,
How about the Federal Reserve boys?
Of course. When he issued money and through the Treasury Department, that's we didn't have to pay interest on. That really capped it off. In fact, he became only the second president in the history of the United States to issue interest-free money. And the first one was Abraham Lincoln, who issued greenbacks to support the Civil War. And I don't think it's just a coincidence that both those men were shot in the head.
Oh, I think you're right, Jim. These episodes that Kennedy was part of, whether they were a combination of all of them or maybe just one major factor, there's no question that it was his undoing.
Right.
Didn't he realize that he was treading on dangerous ground when he was starting to upset the apple cart?
Yes, I believe he did. In fact, there was a very eerie home movie that Kennedy made where he grabs himself and rolls on the ground like he's been shot. And I think at another point he told someone, if somebody wanted to kill me, it wouldn't be that difficult. You just have to get a guy with a rifle in a tall building, and, that was pretty prescient. But, George, I have two tidbits of information that you and your listeners are probably not aware of that I think are extremely important in connection with this case. And if you allow me, I'd like to go through those two.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, the first has to do with computer models. Excuse me. A couple of years ago, Peter Jennings on ABC produced a 2-hour special on the Kennedy assassination, and the big foundation of their conclusion that it was only one shooter from the Texas School Book Depository was based on this computer model. Other people have used computer models. There's even a game out that caused a lot of controversy about, now you can shoot at President Kennedy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things like this. And they're all based on these computer models, and we've kind of gotten so used to computers now that we feel like, well, if the computer says this is the way it is, that's just the way it has to be. And yet, if you stop and think about it, we have to realize that a computer is no better than the information that's put into it. The old adage, garbage in, garbage out. And so I want to point out that for any computer model to be 100% accurate, it's got to have 100% accurate data going into it, right? So to make a computer model of the Kennedy assassination, you would have to have 100% accurate information coming in dealing with the topography of Dealey Plaza, the distances, elevation, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to point out that years ago I interviewed Bob West, who was the Dallas County surveyor, and his associate Chester Brenneman on separate occasions. Now, these were the two men who were hired by the Warren Commission to survey Dealey Plaza in the spring of 1964, and the Warren Commission, back in their volumes, actually publishes a little postage-sized stamp of their map and a little legend, which gives all of this pertinent data. And to the best of my knowledge, this is the data that has been used by everybody from ABC to everyone else to base their computer models on. Now, here's the story. Both Bob West and Chester Brenneman very adamantly told me in no uncertain terms that the Warren Commission altered their numbers.
What?
Yes. And I can prove that because Chester Brenneman allowed me to copy his original survey map that they had done for the Warren Commission. And on there, by the way, in addition to altered numbers in their legend as when it was reproduced in the Warren Commission, there are also notations saying here's a bullet mark on the curb here and a bullet mark in the street here. And he said they were ordered to delete those. And the Warren Commission, of course, never showed us that. Now, I think, what more can I say? Case closed.